Rabbi and Maria and Lee and Joe and Marcus and Michael and Harold and Al and oh my goodness, hold on, I'm missing people.
Brian.
And Michael, and let me move over to the screen. I apologize. We might have some audio problems today and some video problems. I'm just going to show the screen where everyone is for 1 second, and then we will go away from that screen. Oh boy, having some technical. There's everybody. So everybody just wave, and I'm going to go away from this screen quickly.
Okay.
So I welcome you all who are here, all the people who are on Facebook who are watching this after the fact. I don't know if you are on Facebook. I don't know if this is broadcasting the audio. There's a little scroll here I added in. I don't know if the audio is on the stream if you're on Facebook or YouTube, but a special welcome to my friends who watch afterwards, and special welcomes to Sabrina and to Helen and to Anne, who all asked for shout-outs. And good morning to all of you who are here. I wanted us to start with, good morning, Kip, good morning, Rita, good morning, Bob, good morning, Ellis, Chad, and Lisa. So glad to have all of you here. As you can see from my screen, I'm here in Mexico City. I have a wedding here on Sunday night, tomorrow night. It's very cool, but a little bit of technical difficulties going on. Let me start with, oh, okay, this is going to go a little slower than I thought. Okay, hold on. I want to start with this one. I'm going to get rid of that crawl because that's just annoying.
On down system, I'm sure too.
Here's your problem. It looks like you're paying attention to what's going on. There's that phrase that says, oh boy. A phrase that says if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention, and I'd like to disagree with that. I'd like to say we can be paying attention. Well, maybe outraged. We can be really upset, but we needn't be in people's faces. And we had a long discussion about that last week. And if I can find the right quote here.
I think it's Marvin Gaye who said what's going on.
Thank you, Rob. Here's a quote that Shmuley sent. It said this. It says, I love you. You're probably thinking, you don't even know me. But if people can hate for no reason, I can love. That was a neat idea. That we can love for no reason. And that was a bit of what we were getting at last week. And let me pull up one other quote that goes along with it. And it's from... There's a few thoughts that I had, and then we'll open for discussion. This is Martin Luther King Jr. He said this. He said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Can I see your heads nod? Yes, we agree with that. It's not an easy thing to do, to love. It's really not. It's hard. It's hard because we get mad, we get angry, and we want to lash out. We want to lash out back at the person that hurt us. And we can be mad. We can be angry. And that's what we talked about last week, is that we can be mad without being mean. And that's what we're trying to get towards. And if I can find that. I'm going with a myriad of quotes, and then we're going to open for discussion. Here's another version of it, and I want to thank Maria for adding these things into the chat. This is Viktor Frankl. Oh boy, hold on. Viktor Frankl said, everything can be taken from a person except one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Everything can be taken from a person except for one last thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And it brings me back to a story that my Buddhist mentor and friend Nagi told. And he said this, if you're leaving a supermarket and you have 2 bags of groceries, and you trip, and the groceries, and you fall and splay out everywhere. He said he said, imagine two different scenarios of the same thing. One, that you trip over a seeing eye dog. And he said, second, you trip over a skateboard that a kid has left there. Can you imagine that you would have the same reaction to tripping over a skateboard and tripping over a seeing eye dog?
No.
Of course not. We would all have a more open understanding. We'd be more compassionate. I remember I was walking at college with my propeller beanie hat on because obviously I was wearing my propeller beanie hat. And somebody snatched my propeller beanie hat off my head as I'm walking down a slight hill. And I whipped around mad as hell, only to find that a tree branch had come down, lifted the hat off of my head. My anger instantly disappeared. What's the difference?
It was very humorous.
It was very humorous. What's the difference between the two? And I'm going to give us, oh wait, not that quote, not that. Hold on. And I have one more quote. Give me one more second. Here's the last one. This is a quote that my therapist said. Well, I adapted it from what my therapist and I were talking about. And if you're on Instagram, you might have seen I posted this. This is a scary time indeed. I'm not losing hope, though. Life is hard enough without hope. Without it, it's too hard. I've just added a lot of quotes in. I put a lot of things in, and I might have put in too many things at the start, but I'm a little bit thrown off not being at my usual spot and the audio being completely off today. So I thank you all for bearing with and knowing that this is a very human service.
I hope so.
So let's start as we have been in past and take a moment to acknowledge, before we start talking about hate and start talking about our reactions to other people's hates, let's take a moment to acknowledge where we are. And I had to look it up. I knew I was on Aztec land currently, and I think it's important that we do this as we acknowledge where we are. I'm in Mexico City right now on what is traditionally Aztec land. It's land of 3 tribes. There was a treaty between the 3 tribes before the Spaniards came up here. And I'd love to hear, if you've researched, especially if you haven't shared before, what land are you on currently? I'd love to hear from 3 or 4 people. What land are you on currently?
Squamish.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mississauga.
Thank you, Rob.
Osage.
Thank you for sharing that. Let's take one more.
Snohomish.
Snohomish. And I'll ask us all, if you haven't already, take a look. I think it's the least we can do is to take a look to see where we are, whose land are we currently sitting on. Okay. I still have this quote up on my screen. I'm having technical difficulties like nobody's business, and I'm really sorry. All right, let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about that Frankl quote. Do you have the ability, at least in theory? Let me see from your put your hands at the bottom of the screen if the answer is no. Put your hands at the top of the screen if the answer is yes, totally. What ability do you have to control your reaction? If I can pull up that Viktor Frankl quote again. What ability do you have to control your reaction to the world around you? Let me see by a show by your hands. Where are you? How able are you to react to choose your own attitude. Let me ask a different related question. Thank you for sharing those. I see hands all over the place. I think we can break this down a little bit. Do we all agree that, let me see by your hands also where they are on the screen. Do we all agree that this is something that we could or should, or at least it is humanly possible to be able to choose our reaction? Do we believe it's at least humanly possible to do? Not necessarily for me, but for human beings in general.
Yeah.
And Ray, you had your hand up. Go ahead, my friend. Or were you raising a digital hand instead of the personal hand? I might have gotten confused there.
Well, I raised the digital hand. Hopefully I put it back down. I'm fine.
Okay. Go ahead, Jack.
Way to go, Ray.
You have to work at it.
Yeah, this is something we have to work on. We have to work on it. It's not an easy thing to do. How? So we all know, at least in theory, that we should be able to react to a person pulling a hat off of our head, or we should be able to react to tripping over a skateboard with the same ease that we can if it was the wind that did it, or the same ease we can that if it was a seeing eye dog. What's stopping us? What's keeping? I don't have a really good answer to this. How can we practice? How can we do this a little better? Go ahead, Rob.
By being aware of it.
Live in the present moment.
It's easy to say, but my present moment is somebody throws a punch at me, I'm going to flinch. Right? Somebody takes my hat off my head, I'm going to spin around to see who it was. I think it's beyond just living in the present.
And if it's a tree?
Say it again, Rob.
And if it's a tree?
Yeah, I didn't react to the tree at all.
Well, you need to, because that's what's going on.
Okay, thank you, Rob.
What Marvin Gaye said, I told you that before.
Yes, just what's going on. Let me take Jack. I think it's Jack. I can't see who that is with their hand. Is that Bob?
Jordan,
That's
and
Bob.
Then Jocelyn.
I think I see Bob and then Jordan.
Jordan and Jocelyn as well.
I'm going to start with Bob, who I see at the bottom of my screen here.
I think that there's a third alternative of where the meeting of dead. What's that?
That was just a little bit of extra sound on a different microphone. Go ahead.
Oh, I think that one of the things, if I tripped over a skateboard, or I think that I somewhat be upset with myself for not watching where I was going.
Oh, right.
So that's another one. And Bob, I think you're going to bring it. That brings us to a whole nother level. Is how do we react to ourselves, and how do we learn to do that? I have the choice in my own head of choosing skateboard or choosing seeing eye dog. Right, that's all. This is all within my own head, ain't it? Go ahead, Jocelyn, and then Jordan, and thank you guys.
I have to completely agree with what Bob just said. There was a time when I was laying down and sleeping in the middle of the night, was perfectly happy sleeping, and my arm moved and knocked a whole glass of water onto my head. And woke up and I was mad. And I looked around and I realized that the only person I could be mad at was me.
Right.
And I was sad that the only person I could be mad at was me. It ruined my.
At what point did it become humorous at all, Jocelyn?
Oh yeah, it's years later. It's the whole most. I mean, it was humorous even then, and I just couldn't. I wanted to laugh at myself that I was so mad at myself at the same time.
I love that's a great example. It's a great example that there was no one else there except for yourself. And how are you going to get that mad at yourself for knocking your own water glass over? That's great. Jordan, go ahead. Let's try again, Jordan.
Hey.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So I'm thinking about something that happened to me just yesterday. I'm driving down one of those Portland streets that might be wide enough for two cars, might only be one car, and it's kind of a judgment call. So I think, okay, both of us can make it, and I'm heading down this road, and there's a big truck coming down the other way, heading down the middle, not yielding. Okay. And anyway, as they pass me, they yell something ragey at me, and I didn't hear it, of course, but I got so, I reacted. I felt, irate, attacked. I was attacked, but rationally, I knew I didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't aggressive. I made a call, and I didn't do anything wrong. But still, I had this autonomic nervous system reaction, right? So I could try to reason myself out of that feeling, thinking I did nothing wrong. But I had a very hard time calming myself down and saying, "It's okay. I'm not mad. I'm okay."
Is there any way to imagine?
I guess that's my message. Is sometimes you can try to control your reaction, but there's a subconscious autonomic nervous system component to all of this too that might be hard to miss.
Yeah. Jordan, is there any way to imagine at all that the person in the car?
You're muted. Ryan, you're muted.
Okay. Is there any way to imagine? Is there any way we can imagine, a backstory for the person in the other car that would give us the space? I'm not saying that it's an easy task to do, but can anyone imagine, Jordan, can you imagine any scenario in which you can say, wow, they were having a really hard day, or they were having this person, is there any way to imagine something about them that softens it on you?
I tried. I think I got there. I tried that. I mean, it's like, oh, maybe just somebody who's young and inexperienced and just full of piss and vinegar, and they'll mellow out eventually.
It's a very hard game to play, and I agree with you. We have an automatic response to it. We have an automatic response, and then maybe that's the game, is training ourselves more and more to soften their reaction afterwards until we can start just having someone flip us off and go, oh, hi. Jane does that. Jane just waves and blows kisses to people who are mad at her in the car. Go ahead, Michael, and then Jeff.
I have a long ways to go before I can be as smooth as Viktor Frankl, but I find it discouraging. This past week, I went off on somebody. I lost my temper completely, and in public, told them to F off, and just went nuts. Everybody's like, "That's so unlike you," and it kind of is. But then again, I did it, right? So it's
right
in there somewhere. So it's in there. And we could go into the whole, we have the dark and the light inside of us kind of stuff. But I think it just takes more practice. Continual practice.
Yeah. And sublimating, right? That's a big word. But sublimating and pushing our anger down when we actually have anger and we just bullshit ourselves that, no, it's okay, no, it's okay, no, it's okay. And you just keep tamping that shit down until you wind up not acting like yourself. And throwing your sugar bowl across.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. It was an ultra-right, conservative kind of person, and she just represents that whole fear of that whole, thing. That's what I think it is the fear of that, the ultra-right.
Yeah. That's scary. It's scary. Go ahead, Jeff. Thank you so much, Michael.
Well, you're talking about the difference between the personal and the interpersonal.
Help me understand.
When the tree took your hat, well, I'll try to explain. When the tree took your hat, it was just you. It was a tree. Oh, this was me. I obviously walked under the tree, so, and the branch grabbed it. Or when you fell over the dog, or think of this is you. It's personally you, and there's no one else or no other person that you can deal with.
Right.
But when you get to the interpersonal, that starts involving your feelings at the time.
Yes.
If you are in a great mood, then you can blow it off and say, hey, it's okay, sorry about that. But if you're not in a great mood and you're feeling that that somehow they dissed you, then you're going to have a quick reaction.
Yeah. So how do we?
Mm-hmm.
All right, folks, we're all here. We all have had enough experience. We all have lived enough life. What kind of hacks do we have? I think one is what Jeff was just talking about, is knowing where we are. It goes to where Michael was as well, is that if you think you're in a fine mood, but you've just been shoving shit down, tamping it down, and you're not really in a good mood, you're not going to react well. So I think knowing oneself, knowing where we are, I think that's a first step for us. Go ahead, Lee.
I think you're talking neurotypical, and I'm not.
Yeah.
So most of the time, I put it in the comments. My resting bitch face stays. So on Wednesday, I had a good example where I'm doing a presentation that had to do with some fairly sensitive material with my. Please don't spotlight me.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. We're going to try to just stick to gallery mood. Sorry about that.
Listening doesn't help. Anyway, Wednesday I was in a space where there were a lot of right-wing people, and I had to deal with some fairly sensitive material at work, and I was challenged again and again and again. But my reaction was one of puzzlement and just saying, well, why do you think that way? Or can you give me examples or whatever? And they just, not really, because I wasn't reading the room right. I wasn't reading the room right. So, and I don't know how to read rooms, people. Yeah. So in my line of work, I usually don't have to, but in some instances where I do, it either goes extremely well because I go outside of my comfort zone to make sure everybody else is comfortable in the situation except me. But most of the time, I just get very burnt out.
Yeah.
And I need an interpreter with me who can read the room much better than I do.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Lee, for pointing that out. Yeah, and I am speaking from a neurotypical POV. That's where my head is. And I grew up with a father who he didn't always understand what was going on with other people's emotions, and he could misread the room hard, and it taught me a lot about patience. Because what he saw was what he saw, and it didn't always have to do with the same reality that I was seeing or what the other person was seeing. I remember him almost getting into a fight with a woman at a street fair because he thought that the two of them were joking, and she was not joking. And brains are definitely different. Go ahead, Aaron.
My father was someone who wasn't comfortable expressing his emotions, so I would have to usually go to him, find out how he was feeling, and talk to him. And sometimes it was difficult. I don't think anyone's really typical, but yeah, some people are more, more on the spectrum. I mean, yeah. My son has autism, so I have to deal with that in special ways. But I think we're all on a spectrum of the sort, not necessarily one or the other.
It reminds me, this whole talk reminds me, do you guys remember the one we did about blowing your nose into a tissue? Remember that one?
No, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rob, was that if someone blows their nose into a tissue and hands you the tissue, we all know to say, no, thank you. I don't want that dirty tissue. And the game, I think, is to learn to do that with their hate. To learn to do that when they say, you're a fucking asshole. And to be able to just say, no, thank you. And for us, let's
admit it.
but to not, and it this all relates back to what Jordan was saying about it being our automatic response. Our automatic response is to go back with heat. Let's go with Al and then Finn.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that there are times, though, when that automatic response is based in something. Mm-hmm. When there's a real threat or something that demands a reaction. Sometimes when people come at me with hate, there's a real threat involved.
Yeah. It's hard to... what you're saying, it's hard to not react.
Yeah, and there are times when it's appropriate to react. It's appropriate to defend yourself, to take a defensive posture, to protect yourself in some way, shape, or form. I think there's important gradients to all this, where it's not just there's a black or a white response. And I don't want to become what I call a stone Buddha.
That's
where I'm just
not reacting. That's what Jane.
I think you may have given me that.
Yeah, Jane used to call me Buddha boy, because back before the age of 30, I wouldn't have reactions. I would just be, oh. I wasn't real at the time, and it wasn't until I actually became real and I had emotions. And then, yes, thank you, Al, for bringing that back. Let's go with Finn. Go ahead, Finn.
I thought the tree example was really good because you had nothing to do with it. You're just in that space at that time. I think a lot of the situations we come across with people acting in ways that might feel harmful to us are kind of like that too, where they're experiencing their own emotions and we just pass by.
Yeah.
And so I made that realization just even walking around in my own house. It felt not necessarily safer, but it just felt more friendly because I was thinking, there are other people having their own tough times and I'm just walking through that.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with me.
There was a meme that went around a long time ago called the garbage truck theory, which was that every so often a garbage truck has to dump everything that's been loaded into it. And if somebody dumps on you, is to realize they're not just dumping on you, they're dumping all the stuff that they have been accumulating up until that point. Garbage truck theory. Kip, go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, good morning. So coming back to the quote, I think what you're talking about here is the ability to choose your reaction, not necessarily not having it, not expressing it.
Yes.
And for me, the ability to choose my reaction, not just be reactive, starts with me being very kind to myself in every little instance that I get annoyed with myself, and to give myself the space to have the emotions that I have.
Can I ask a question?
Because if I don't...
Yeah. You're saying that
if I don't do that, then I've got a garbage truck that's going to dump on the next person that comes along.
Wow. So that's an idea. How do we feel about that? That if we're not kind to ourselves over all of the little picayune things, that those all will build up in ourselves and we'll have a higher likelihood of reacting and not being able to choose our reaction when somebody dumps on us. Am I catching what you're saying, Kip?
That's what I was saying, yes.
So that's awful. So that brings it back to being kind to ourselves and forgiving ourselves our own transgressions. It's fantastic because I kind of wanted to go there, but I do want to get back to that. But let's take a moment for our I am, our interstitials. I can't remember them right now. Joe, do you
Intentions, memorials, intercessions, meditation.
Would you lead us for that minute, please, Joe?
Sure. This week, Frankie D, Kathleen, Eileen, Eloise, Athena, Adam, Evelyn, Jack A, Betty A, Alex, Diane, Francis, Maria, Carol, Michael, Leanne, Lauren B, Lauren L, Mary H, Christine M, Kip, Marilyn G, Amy, Betsy M, Rita S, April, Emily, and Peggy B.
Thank you for reading those. Let's take a minute starting right now. All right. Thank you all. I want us to look for a moment at these numbers. We did this a long time ago, and I'm going to do a review on it. It links in with what Kip was just saying. The numbers 1 through 5, you all are familiar with the numbers. Yay. These are stages of learning. This is from Lev Vygotsky. It's called the zone of proximal development, and all educators know this, use it. And I want us to see how it works. So level 1 is where you can't do something at all. Level 5 is where you can do it perfectly. You don't even have to think about it. I usually use the example of driving. For most of us who drive, we don't have to think about driving. You just do it. There's no thought involved. And then there are these stages in between. When I was learning the French horn, I was at level 2 for a very long while, where I didn't know, like I knew how to read music, but I didn't know which fingers to put on the key, which fingers to use to get an A. And that's level 2. My teacher had to point to the fingers. Can't do it at all. Can do it with a lot of help. Can't do it at all. Need to do it with a lot of help. Level 3 is where the teacher says, come on, Brian, remember D and A are related. So what does that mean the fingers for the A are? Oh, okay, I got it. Yeah, okay. I'm getting a hint from the outside. Level 4 is where I'm practicing on my own later, and I can go, oh, I remember an A and a D are the same fingering at that range. Okay, cool. Okay, that self-hints. And then finally 5 is you do it by yourself perfectly fine. I want you to take a moment to think about being kind to yourself. And a lot of us are not yet at level 5 of being able to be kind to ourselves all the time. A lot of us are down here, level 3. Level 3 is where you need somebody to remind you to be kind to yourself. That's what we're doing right now. Right now, in this Saturday service, I want to take a moment to remind you to be kind to yourself. A lot of us are able to be kind to ourselves and remind ourselves to be kind to ourselves. That's level 4. Now, here's an interesting thing to know about these 5 points, is when you are in a stressful situation, you revert down a stage. It's just how it is. If you're at level 5 for driving, if you're like with Jordan was at level 5 for driving. He knows how to drive just fine. And a car's coming, approaching him. He might have to start talking to himself. Pull over to the right side. Get it. Right when you're talking to yourself, you're at level 4. Now here's the rub with self-kindness. If you know to be kind to yourself, and you can tell yourself to be kind to yourself, and you're at level 4, you don't need some hints from the outside. When something stressful happens, because of the nature of human beings, what happens? You fall down a level. Which means you need someone from the outside to remind you to be kind to yourself, which is a fucker because you're in a stressful situation and you can't remember that you need to reach out to somebody to ask them to be kind to you, because you see that I see some nods going on. This is the problem with being kind to ourselves. It's really hard. And I'm going to make it into a math problem. There's a certain amount of practice X that needs to be done over a period of time T until you can get yourself to being kind to yourself with regularity. There's an amount of practice X that needs to be done over a period of time T to move yourself from level 4, I know I should be doing it, to where you're doing it without thinking about it so much. Now, question is, what is that amount X and what is that time T? And here's the math problem. You have to find that out for yourself. I was really proud of having thought of that. Thank you very much. Practice.
There's a quote. There's some information in the chat that's interesting, completely in a different way, same subject. I think it is our human right to show emotion if we get angry or annoyed or frustrated. I mean, to conceal my feelings is kind of lying and won't give the other person any chance to understand what happened and maybe learn something. Our relationship will deepen if I am truly showing my feelings.
Amen.
Amen.
Let's be kind to ourselves. We're going to pivot here, and I'm going to bring us to a quote from St. Augustine, who, if you know me well, know I have some definite issues with this man, but he's got this great quote. Can't argue with him for this. St. Augustine said, "Hope," we're switching over to hope now. "Hope has two beautiful daughters. Their names are anger and courage. Anger at the way things are, and courage to see that they do not remain as they are." Hope has two beautiful daughters, right? I was talking us about being hopeful, having hope. Hope has two beautiful daughters, anger and courage. Anger at the way things are. So if I ask you to have hope, and you respond, "The world is really horrible right now, and I'm really mad about the way things are," yes, that's a component of having hope. Is hope has two children, anger and courage. Anger at the way things are, and courage to see that they need not remain as they are. That's a beautiful quote.
Has two children, anger and courage. Anger at the way things are, and courage to see that they need not remain as they are.
That was quite an echo. That was me talking on an echo. I don't know how that happened. I want to give us a little antidote so hope helps us deal with fear. And I'm going to do something that I put in the advertisement for today. I said no Hebrew. But then there was this quote that is so beautiful from Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav that I have to do it in Hebrew because it's beautiful that way too. And let me read to you first in English. Nachman of Bratslav said, "The world is a narrow bridge, and the important thing is not to be afraid." The world is a narrow bridge, and the important thing is not to be afraid. It's not exactly his words. His verbs were a little bit different. It's not that the thing is not to be afraid. It's that the thing is to not add to the fear. And it's a subtle difference, but I think it's important. And if you look on the internet, you'll see this quote many times, and it says, "The world is a narrow bridge. The important thing is have no fear." And I think that's horrible. It's a great idea, but it's horrible that the world is a narrow bridge. The important thing is to have no fear. We're going to have fear. Of course we're going to have fear. Life is scary. So the important thing is not to add to the fear. And I'm going to try something a little bit different today. And I'm going to sing this to you in Hebrew. And I want you to, in a woo-woo kind of way, let the words wash over you. It's a lullaby I sang to my kids as they fell asleep. And I sang in times of strife. And it goes like this. Kol ha'olam kulo gesher sar me'od.
And this week, regulators found the facility runs afoul of the state's...
No idea how that works. Gesher sar me'od. Gesher sar me'od. Kol ha'olam kulo gesher sar me'od. Gesher sar me'od. Gesher sar me'od. V'ha'ikar lo lefachek klal. V'ha'ikar lo lefachek klal. Yai dai dai dai, yai dai dai, yai dai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai dai dai, yai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai. All the world's a narrow bridge. All the world's a Narrow bridge, my love, all the world's a narrow bridge. All the world's a narrow bridge. What's importance? Not to add fear. What's importance? Not to add fear, my love. What's importance? Not to add fear. What's importance? Not to add fear. Yai, die, 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 yai, die, die. Yai, die, 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 yai, die, 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 yai, die, 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 yai, die, die, yai, die, 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 die.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lovely.
It's true, isn't it? The world is a really scary place. And it's so important for us not to add any more fear to it. Amen. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Here was the quote as my therapist said it. Let me find. Hold on. This is what my therapist said that I adapted. There are a lot of things that are scary right now, and it's okay to be scared. There are a lot of things that are scary right now, and it's okay to be scared. Here's your problem. It looks like you're paying attention to what's going on. There are a lot of things that are really scary right now, and it's okay to be scared. I don't know when we got learned out of being afraid and we were told, I don't know if we were told or we just learned that we're not supposed to be scared as adults. Or if we're scared, we're not supposed to tell other people we are. That's a hell of bullshit there. Life is really scary. And it's really, fear is up right now. Fear is really up on top of the charts. And I'm going to tell us all, it's okay for us to be scared. We don't have to live in some Pollyanna universe where there is no fear.
Comment in the chat, showing that you're scared shows that you are vulnerable.
Right? Being scared means that you're vulnerable. And we're not supposed to be vulnerable, are we? Announcements, a few announcements. One, if you don't make a donation to Religion Outside the Box and you'd like to, go to rotb.org and you can make a donation. Appreciate any support that you give. If you're a donor at the $18 a month level, you should have already received a book in the mail. And if you haven't, please get in touch with me, and I'll be glad to fix that. And I do.
Very good.
And Emily likes the book, so that's
Very good. It's a wonderful story.
Thank you for saying, and thank you all for your support. That's the way that this works. This works because people give support and give help, and I appreciate it very much. Other announcements, please go over to the Clubhouse, mn.rotb.org. mn.rotb.org. We're still trying to figure out a little bit about how to get the Clubhouse threads to work. It gets a little gumbled up, but we're playing with it. And we have a new featured person coming up coming up Thursday, so watch out there for that. And to continue the conversations, and not just a conversation about what we talk about at this service, but even talking about picking blueberries and eating delicious blueberries, or whatever it is that's on your mind and your heart. If you want to connect with a community, and it's a really beautiful thing. I love that we all can connect here. But the Clubhouse is another place where you are all welcome to just go and post something and say, I'm having a shitty day today. And to, if you're going with the levels 1 through 5 and you know enough to know that you need a little bit extra love, Clubhouse is a great place to go and ask for a little bit of love, or to ask people, say, hey, I did something that I'm proud of. I'd like to be celebrated for that little thing that I'm proud of. So please feel free to go to the Clubhouse for that. Speaking of is there other? Oh yeah, if you are looking for God, I don't know how many of you are looking for God, but if you're looking for God, this service might or might not be the right place for you. I did see a bumper sticker that said, I found Jesus, he was in my trunk, which is a bit of an odd one. But if you are looking for God and you've already checked this service and you've already checked your trunk, that sounds a little off, so let's leave that out. If you are looking to talk with more people about God, we have a Shekhinah group, and that's what that group mainly does, and you can find that group in the Clubhouse, or Rita, go ahead, tell us how else we can find you.
Well, we talk about a lot more than God, I should say.
Yes.
We're into quantum theory, etc. But nonetheless, if you are interested in joining us on Sundays at 1 o'clock Pacific time, I'm going to put my email in the chat.
Thank you so much.
And then if you would email me that you're interested, I will add you to the email list that gets the notices and the Zoom invitation.
Thank you, Rita, for doing that. So if you're looking for God and this is not scratching that itch, and you want to just talk metaphysics with a group of interesting people, to please go ahead and do that. Other announcement, Tuesday we have a group at this exact same link, Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific. Everyone is welcome to that as well. Other announcements that I'm missing? Anybody recall something that should be announced?
I assure you that when we go to Shekinah, God is there.
Yes, that is completely true. God is everywhere, which led me at one point to selling little plastic boxes that were called God in a Box, because if God is everywhere, God is also in the box.
Can we get one of those?
I can see what I can do, Emily. I'll see what I can do. Also, to please stick around for the second hour. In about 10 minutes, we turn off the streaming. We turn off the streaming part, and then this just becomes private groups. There's a poetry group. Is Betsy here? I think Betsy was going to run the poetry group. Betsy is here? I'm seeing nods. I don't see... No. Betsy's
here.
Oh, great. So Betsy's running a poetry group. There's a deep dive... Okay, thank you, Betsy. There's a poetry room, which people stop in. There's a deep dive group where people discuss what we're talking about here even further. That's usually with Al and with Kip. And there's Donuts, which is with Joe and Maria. And if you've never hung around for a second hour, I encourage you to please stop around in any one of those groups. Can you hear me at all? Can you hear me? You can hear me? I can't hear you anymore because that thing, my phone just canceled the phone call. So this is really not, I can't hear you guys anymore. My phone dropped. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thank all of you, and we are going to move into Donuts now because I'm flying blind and I can't hear anything going on. So Maria, I'm going to hostify you, and thank you to Maria for taking the role of Alex and doing our tech. So Maria, you are now officially the host, so you can start making... Yes. No, she's not the host. Yes, she is the host. I'm going off of people's faces, and all y'all are doing different faces right now. That's great. Maria's with thumbs up. Okay. And I am going to sign myself off. I'm going to go explore Mexico City with my son, and and I thank you all for joining me for a shortened Saturday service, and I'll see you next week. Thanks so much.